Hello and welcome to Voices of History, and to our series, Road to the Decline of Rome. Today we're talking about an emperor who clawed his way to the top through a brutal civil war, and, in doing so, created a whole new Roman Empire. One built not on old traditions, but on the cold, hard steel of the legions. This is the story of Septimius Severus.
So, that golden age of the Antonines? You know, those decades of pretty good emperors and relative peace? Well, it doesn't just fade away. It ends with a crash. Emperor Pertinax is murdered, and just like that, the dream of a stable empire is shattered. Rome is thrown right back into the kind of chaos it hadn't seen in over 100 years.
And what happens next? Well, it's a sign of just how rotten things had become. The Praetorian Guard, the guys who were supposed to protect the emperor, literally put the throne up for auction. And an incredibly rich senator named Didius Julianus actually wins the bidding. He buys the emperorship. Can you believe that? The Senate, basically at sword point, has no choice but to go along with this absolute sham.
An empire for sale. But our new emperor in Rome was about to learn a very hard lesson about where the real power in the empire now lay.
Yeah, Julianus quickly found out that buying the top spot in Rome meant, well, pretty much nothing. See, for a while now, the center of gravity in the empire had been shifting away from the city. The real power? It was out on the frontiers, with tough, battle-hardened generals commanding legions who were loyal to them, not to some rich guy they'd never even met.
The three contenders. And sure enough, three of these powerful governors took one look at the situation in Rome and said no way. They had the armies, they had the power, and they all started looking towards the capital. There was only one throne, which meant one thing. Civil war was coming. There was no avoiding it.
All right, so here are our main players. In Pannonia, on the Danube frontier, you've got Septimius Severus, a tough general from Africa with some of the fiercest legions in the empire. Way out east, there's Pessinnius Niger, who controls Syria and all of its incredible wealth. And up in Britain, you have Clodius Albinus with his loyal legions. Three powerful men, three massive armies, one ultimate prize.
In a fight like this, speed is everything. And Severus, he understood this better than anybody. While his rivals were still planning and gathering their forces, he acted. He saw Didius Julianus as just a roadblock, and he didn't hesitate. He immediately began a lightning-fast march straight for Rome.
And his strategy was just brilliantly ruthless. Before taking on his main rivals, he made his base secure. First, a genius political move. He temporarily neutralized Clodius Albinus by offering him the title of Caesar, basically naming him as heir apparent. With Albinus happy for the moment, Severus stormed down into Italy. The Senate, terrified, had Julianus executed. Then, Severus disbanded the entire Praetorian Guard and replaced them with his own loyal veterans. Just like that, Rome was his.
Showdown in the east. Okay, so with Italy locked down and one rival temporarily on his side, Severus could turn his full, undivided attention to his other problem, Pessinnius Niger.
Severus's campaign was just relentless. His generals pushed Niger's armies back across modern-day Turkey, beating them at Cyzicus and then again near Nicaea. The final crushing blow came at the Battle of Issus. Yep, the exact same place where Alexander the Great had his legendary victory. History really does repeat itself, and Niger's army was completely destroyed.
Niger was caught and executed, and his head was sent back to serve as a very grim warning. The East now belonged to Severus. But he knew, and everyone knew, that his deal with Clodius Albinus was just a temporary truce. You can't have two suns in the sky. A final, even bigger war was coming.
And in the end, it was Severus who provoked it. He completely broke his promise and named his own young son, Caracalla, as the new Caesar. It was a public slap in the face, a clear message to Albinus that their deal was over. So Albinus, who actually had a lot of support from senators who feared Severus, had no choice. He crossed over from Britain into Gaul and prepared for the final showdown.
This set the stage for one of the largest, most brutal battles in the history of the Roman Empire. Near the city of Lugdunum, what we now call Lyon in France, the two remaining contenders would throw everything they had at each other for total control.
And Albinus was a smart commander. He wasn't going down easy. As the battle raged, he sprung an absolutely brilliant trap. He dug a series of trenches and then covered them up to look like solid ground. Severus's cavalry charged right into them. The battle suddenly and violently turned against Severus. For a moment there, it really looked like he was about to lose it all.
The sheer scale of this fight is just staggering.
Now, it's almost certainly an exaggeration, but the sources from the time claimed that 300,000 men fought that day. That tells you how massive this felt to the people living through it. This was the battle that would decide the fate of their entire world.
So with his army collapsing, his life on the line, Severus was saved by a desperate last-ditch charge led by his cavalry commander. This one heroic push completely shattered Albinus's lines, turning what looked like certain defeat into a stunning victory. Albinus fled and took his own life, and just like that, it was over. Septimius Severus was the sole undisputed master of the Roman Empire.
Having won the empire through war, Severus was now going to rule it by the very same logic. He wasn't trying to restore the old republic or anything like that. No, he began to completely remake the Roman state to reflect the real source of his power, the army. This wasn't a restoration, it was a revolution. What he built was, for all intents and purposes, a military autocracy. And what does that mean? It means that the opinion of the Senate didn't matter nearly as much as the opinion of the legions. The old ways were done. From now on, the sword was what made an emperor legitimate.
And he put this philosophy into practice. He created 3 brand new legions that were loyal only to him personally. He gave all soldiers a massive pay raise. He made it legal for soldiers to get married while in service, which helped secure the loyalty of their whole families. And, in a really chilling move, he permanently stationed one of those new, powerful legions right outside the city of Rome, as a constant, silent reminder of who was really in charge.
Now let's be fair. Severus did put an end to the chaos. He stopped the civil wars, he restored order, and he brought stability back to the empire. But it all came at an incredibly high price, a price that would have massive consequences for Rome's future.
Nothing, and I mean nothing, captures his philosophy better than the advice he supposedly gave his sons on his deathbed. Enrich the soldiers and despise all other men. That's it. That's the entire playbook, right there. The whole purpose of the state was now to keep the army happy.
And that's the ultimate trade-off, isn't it? Yes, Severus fixed the broken empire. He brought peace. But the cost was creating a system where an emperor's survival now depended entirely on keeping the military loyal, a loyalty that had to be constantly bought with money and special treatment.
Which brings us to the final big question about his reign. By solving the crisis of his own time, did Septimius Severus accidentally plant the seeds for the even bigger crises of the next century? He created a system where any general with a loyal army could look at the throne and think, hey, I could take that. He brought peace for sure, but was it worth the price? We'll see you on the roads of the empire on the way to the decline of Rome.